I've waited a long time to get this camera, or to get a camera with the same kind of specs as what this camera's got. But after owning it for roughly 90 days and using it pretty much every day, do I regret buying it? And I feel like this video could open a can of worms. I bought the A7Rv for 2 reasons. Number 1, because I wanted it as a B cam when it comes to video alongside my A7S3. And number 2 was to get the high resolution photos, because in my older age, I've turned into a bit of a photography pixel peeping snob. I said it would never happen, but I feel like it happens to all of us at some point in our life. But I paid £4,000 for this camera, and I could have bought 2 Sony A7 Mark IVs for that. So yeah, let's get to it. I've used this camera for a lot of the videos on the channel. When I haven't been using it, then I've still used it for a good chunk. Now, what I have used it for is every single photo I've taken since getting the camera. I haven't even touched my A7S3 when it comes to photography, apart from when I'm having to do thumbnails, obviously. I can't take a photo of the camera with the camera, if you know what I mean. But you know what? I'm so pleased with everything that this camera is giving me. I feel like the photos that I'm taking have just this new lease of life, and it's a really rewarding feeling. The image quality from this is just pristine. I love it. Resolution gives me incredibly detailed images. It also gives me plenty of room to be able to crop if I need to when it comes around to editing. I feel like because of the amount of information it has in each photo, because of the amount of megapixels, when it comes around to Photoshop, content aware feel like deleting things out of photos just seems a lot easier. It's giving me better results. And the color straight out of camera for both photo and video is really natural. This camera has been just so fun to take photos with. Throughout last year, I feel like my photography became a little bit stale. I wasn't enjoying it, I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. And I feel like the A7Rv has kind of reignited that passion for me. That's not really a reason, it's definitely not a feature. It doesn't say on the Sony website that this will obviously make you a better photographer, but it's one of the reasons we buy these things, for the feeling, right? Tripods? What are they? Like 8 stops of in-body stabilization. Also them 8 stops of stabilization also transfer into the video part, making everything a little bit more smoother handheld. And it also means that you can get sharper images when using a longer exposure on your shutter. 8 stops of stabilization, there isn't really a figure for that, it's all relative. But here's a photo I took of flowing water, and this photo was taken completely handheld. Now, let's have a guess. How long do you think that exposure was? I've never been that guy for getting them kind of photos, because most of the time you need something like a tripod. The autofocus on this thing still blows my mind. Like, it's just on the money every single time. I've used it for photography, I've used it for videography, and every single time it just tracks the subject so well throughout the whole frame. And it's exactly what you expect and what you want from a camera, so it's not like out of this world groundbreaking, but the fact that you don't have to put that much effort into actually like thinking about the focusing, but you get so much back for it, like it just works, and it's really satisfying. I've said it so much, but this camera seriously has the best autofocus from any camera I've ever used. Plus this camera also has lens breathing compensation, which is a massive advantage when it comes to doing videography. I don't think the A7Rv is the first Sony camera to have lens breathing compensation built into the camera body, but it's nice to see it making its way onto the Sony Alpha systems. The lens breathing compensation feature does come with a crop factor because it's being done inside the camera, not inside the lens. But if you can live with a small crop factor, then this feature will be a big thing for you. But unfortunately, it's not all rays of sunshine in the R5 world. Something that really irritates me about my Sony A7Rv is the playback function. Now this may just be my camera, I don't actually know anyone who has another A7Rv, but it seems that sometimes when I press the play button on the back to be able to review my footage or my photos, and then I'm scrolling through, it doesn't seem to scroll very well. It just stays on one image. You can see the numbers changing, like say if you've got 180 files, you can easily see it scrolling through the 180 files, but it doesn't show up on the actual preview. Now your first thought is probably the same first thought as what I had, and that's, am I using the right memory cards? But even with the V90 cards, which should be fast enough easily for this camera, I still seem to be having the same issue. I've tried multiple V90 cards and still had the same issue. Like I say, it may just be my camera, I may just be working the camera that little bit too hard, but it's something I should mention. So if you do have the Sony A7Rv, let me know if you're having the same issue, because I'm finding it really strange. Battery life on this thing, I just seem to be able to go through batteries a lot faster, and that's with a brand new battery which came with the camera, a genuine Sony battery. I just seem to be able to smash through fully charged batteries incredibly quickly, so yeah, that's one thing. And still, something I partially can't get my head around is the lack of 4K in 100 and 120 frames per second, even at 1.5 times crop. Now, things like that aren't a deal breaker for everybody, because if you're buying this camera, you're possibly only buying it for mainly the photography part, not so much the videography part. And if you do need 100 or 120 frames per second, you can still film in 1080p and upscale it in post if you need it to be in 4K. And I get why Sony haven't included 120 frames per second in 4K on this camera, because you also have the A1 which can do that alongside the A7S3. The A7R line isn't designed with video first, it's designed for mainly photography and a little bit of video if you need it. But regardless, you can't blame me for wanting it, you know, like, I'm not the only person out there, surely. But for the most part, as a photographer and a videographer who makes content on a daily basis in both a professional environment, but also here on YouTube, it's fantastic. I've taken some of my most favorite photos with this camera, printed them off, put them on my wall to display, but I've also sold them over on my website. It's given me the kick up the rear end to get my passion back for photography and just get out there and start enjoying it. So is this camera the right camera for you? Is this the right camera for everybody out there? No, definitely not. If anything, it's probably a little bit too much camera for some people. And what I mean by that is, as I've got older and more mature, I guess you could say, more financially responsible, and I never thought that day would come. But I've gone from looking at every spec on the camera and trying to get the best camera out there on the market to just getting a camera which fills my needs perfectly. And for me, for what I need out of a camera right now in my career, the A7R Mark V fits it perfectly. And now I'll stop because I'm quickly starting to sound like my dad. Do I regret buying this camera? Absolutely not. It fits my needs so much better than something like an A7 IV, fits my needs better than my A7S3. And over the last 90 days, it's easily paid for itself multiple times over. Not just in a financial way, but also the excitement that it's brought me from being able to take amazing photos. Photos, yes, I could have taken with another camera, but photos which give me a feel-good feeling. And with that, I'm off to go take some more photos. So if you enjoyed the video, you want to see more like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you do, I'll see you right there. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.